Happy Wine Wednesday. Oh, I've got a sea dragon in my forehead. That's right. I'll move over. Happy Wine Wednesday, everyone. Hope you're having a fabulous week. I apologize. You guys know we're always a little bit late because of somebody. I'm going to blame Cheryl. No, it's really me. But we were trying to be able to get Brandy to join. If you are in our Facebook group, Seahorse Whisperers group on Facebook, you would have known that we had a detailed conversation that we will discuss tonight in detail. But we were hoping she could jump in and join, but we didn't get her in here in time. And so if she does jump in, that's great. If not, she'll be in the comment section, and we love having her there too. Next week, we actually have a guest. I'm not going to give away any hints or anything else. Look for posts because we will have a guest. And I will give you a slight hint. It might just have to do with macroalgae. So all the Seahorse people can get excited and make sure to join next week because we will have a guest. Other than that, tonight we do have quite a bit to discuss after the conversation on Facebook group about with Brandy. But is there any updates personally? Like Holly, guys, sorry. Let me just tell you, I'm exhausted. I'm not going to do well tonight. I apologize. It's not even the wine. It's the work schedule. I only have a couple more weeks of training. I posted that. I'm going to be back with you guys in full force very soon, but please excuse my randomness tonight because I'm look at the bags. I'm exhausted. So, anyways, I've got Holly, Cheryl, and Ray with me so far. Hopefully, Brandy will jump in, but if not, I've got these fine folks with me. And Holly, any updates before we dive into the conversation?
So I did my 6-month Aquachar change out
Okay. All right.
today. And I did notice a difference in the display tank, which was looking good before. The water was clear, but I noticed a couple hours after I changed the Aquachar out, it was sparkling clean. I'm like, wow, that's right. That's how it looks when you first add the Aquachar. And it's been 6 months. So what it says to do is at the 6-month point, you change out 50% of the Aquachar for new Aquachar. And then the used can be regenerated. So I changed out all the Aquachar in both of my tanks, both from the char chambers, that Robert King makes, and from the sump. I keep a bag in each sump. So I changed out 50% in all those things. And at the end, I had a big pile of it. So the way you recharge it is you soak it for 24 hours in a mix of peroxide, hydrogen peroxide, and water, 50-50. So it's soaking. And then I dry it out in the sun, outside, let it dry. And I put it in a Ziploc bag afterwards and label it with how many times it's been used. You can use it, I want to say, like 4 times, maybe more. It says, I don't remember, but I'm only on number 1 right now. So I'm collecting a bag to
Recharge.
reuse. Like next time I'll have enough to fill everything again. And I still have a bunch of brand new. It's not cheap. So I want to get the most use that I can out of it, but it does make a difference.
See, I
So
feel like it is kind of cheap compared to other products in that category. And I would say
Mhm.
I'm so cheap that, well, I guess that doesn't make me cheap, but I would say I'm so lazy. I'm so
Nothing's
lazy.
cheap in our hobby.
Well, I was going to say, I'm so lazy. I haven't even regenerated using the peroxide as you're discussing. I know it can be done,
Mhm.
but I've had enough in the bag that I bought and the bag that was sent to me that I just put new in, you know? So it's cool that you
Well,
see
I
that the
do it
regeneration's working.
immediately. Well, I haven't put any of the regenerated stuff in yet. It's accumulating. So we'll see how that goes. I haven't used it twice yet. everything I'm putting in is new, but as soon as I take it out, I do the peroxide treatment so I won't forget
Yep.
and say, oh, okay, well, did this get treated or not yet? So I do it and then I put it in a Ziploc after it's dry and save it. And eventually it'll go through its second cycle, but I haven't got there yet. I still have all new char.
Okay,
So
gotcha. So you're
haven't
with me.
tried the second generation yet.
Well, I've heard from multiple people that the regeneration does work. So I'm not
Nice.
fearful. I just was saying I haven't done it myself yet because I had so much
Me
left over.
neither. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, it's cool that you're trying it and you're generating it and you're keeping it in separate
Mhm.
bags so you know what's going on. So very cool. And love that you have a sparkling tank. Part of the topic tonight will be my cloudy tank and what's going on with that. But anything new with you, Cheryl or Ray? Anything you need to bring up, discuss?
Not Seahorse wise.
Right.
We don't need to talk about the other.
We'll leave
Yeah.
it there.
Over here.
All right. Well, let's see. Anybody in the Facebook group? Like I said, we have a guest next week. Any questions you have tonight, it's open chat, so bring them in the conversation. We're hoping Brandy jumps in to give us a few more details. But basically, you guys help me. I was looking for it. I was trying to be prepared here. But help me reiterate what the problem was. Did you guys see the post?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
Holly, what?
Let me see if I might even have it up
You know what?
so I
I'm going to
can read
find
it.
it and read it because Brandy's
I
given us
don't,
permission.
but yeah, I was just saying I could find it and read it. But the gist of it was she lost some seahorses very suddenly during a water change.
So she did a water change, and then all of a sudden the seahorses started gasping, lying at the bottom of the tank. She immediately took them out, put them in a hospital tank, which is what we say to do, and ended up losing them, which is terrible. It's happened to us all. And I appreciate, for the record, people that do share these stories because the next person who reads it or hears this will know, oh my gosh, when that happens, I could do this. Or maybe this is why that happened. We're helping newcomers and new people do better. But Holly, I think you were the first one that responded to that post, right? I'm looking for it. Okay.
Yes.
So here we go. I found it. I'm not going to share the whole post. You can go to the group. But basically, as Holly said, she was worried a little bit about pH being elevated. She did everything right. She cycled the tank. She bought a goby. After having snails and goby and coral, soft coral that was seahorse safe. She added this 3 seahorses, all from the same store. Everything was fine. They were eating well. We have to discuss eating though. Please don't let me forget to discuss eating. But they were eating. Everyone was eating. She has RODI system. She did water. She did a water change. She does this on her other tanks. And then again, the seahorses started gasping, laying at the bottom, and she ended up losing them. So, Holly, your first reaction was to kind of look at pH, right? I think.
Well, she said her pH was 7.4,
Mhm.
but the salinity was 1.022. And I never had pH that low. I don't know much about pH. I know we keep for the seahorses generally between 7.8 and 8.2. Pretty much is about what mine runs. So, I mean, I don't know if that had anything to do with anything or not, but my first reaction is that the way they were acting, see, normally most things that affect seahorses, it's a long, slow demise. They'll be sick and it takes a long time for them to go
Mhm.
because they were reacting so suddenly and died suddenly. My first thought was a poisoning of some kind, and ammonia came to mind, except for she had no ammonia reading.
Right.
So, I kind of addressed in my comments her perimeters, like the temperature and everything, the pH and stuff, they weren't really right for the seahorses, but they wouldn't have caused that sudden a
Immediate,
death.
right?
So I was thinking, something must have got in their water somehow and poisoned them, or they were already deteriorated to the point where the stress of the water change and possibly the pH may have been the finishing.
How long did she have them before they passed?
Great
Not
question,
long.
Cheryl. Great question, Cheryl. And Ray, you actually commented on the post too. What was your thoughts? Just from an
I
immediate
had no
post.
idea why they died,
Okay.
but my comments were basically about keeping with clownfish and explaining why that I
Mhm.
didn't do it here. But I'm looking at the post here now, trying to see if she says how long.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll jump in and I'll say immediately when she talked about gasping and lying at the bottom, my immediate reaction was, did it look like this? And I posted a video I did like 5 years ago. It's not a great video, guys, but about treating a seahorse with ammonia poisoning, right? And I had to treat my seahorses with ammonia poisoning because they were shipped to an LFS. The LFS had like 5 seahorses in a bag or something. I was only getting 3 of them. So they opened the bag, took their 2 seahorses out, and let my 3 seahorses sit in a bag that they reclosed. So if anybody doesn't know, basically, when you're shipping seahorses, the pH of the water, help me to say this correctly, guys, because I'm very tired, but it basically goes down. When the pH goes down, ammonia, any ammonia in the water, like from them peeing, from whatever, turns into ammonium. Ammonium does not hurt seahorses, right? So as you're shipping them, low pH, no oxygen, they're safe. Then the second you open the bag, air hits the water, pH rises, and then the ammonium turns back into ammonia. So in the case of my personal seahorses, when the LFS opened the bag, took their seahorses out, and then closed that bag back up, my seahorses were being poisoned by ammonia. And I did a whole video showing how I treated them with methylene blue. And you can go watch that, of course, and I'll try to link it when we're done. But bottom line is the symptoms were similar, right? The gasping, the like literally lying down in like they can't
Yeah.
upright themselves. They can't figure out what way is right. Like they're just completely I'm not scientific, but it has something to do with their blood and brown blood. I don't know. But basically, it messes them up big time, right? So when I posted about that and asked if the symptoms were the same, Sam Banfield and I started having this conversation. And she said, that sounds like classic ammonia poisoning. And I was like, I agree,
Does.
but these aren't new seahorses. It's not like they were just shipped, whatever. So
No.
we got down. I'm getting to the point, guys. I'm rambling, I know. But basically, we got down to the point that she had turned off all her pumps, all her, airlines, everything, no flow in the tank to do this water change. And she was moving stuff around and she was disturbing the sand. So, can we talk a little bit about why that might be a problem? And I think she's
Okay.
trying to join.
Before we go there, I'd like to know, was the water that she used, was it dechlorinated?
Yes.
It was dechlorinated.
Yeah, she uses RODI water. She makes her own. She'd had the seahorses, from what I gather from reading her post, about 2 weeks. And there was no nitrites, no ammonia reading when she did the water change.
Well, she did.
She said,
She ends up saying, as we talked, because this is a very long post, but as Sam and I talked with her and tried to discuss this, and I think she's trying to join. Hi, Brandy, if you're there.
Hi, I am. I'm listening.
Awesome.
there she is.
Yeah.
Yay.
So basically, after she did this big water change, she tested the water and everything looked perfect. So she didn't know why the seahorses were reacting so badly. My first reaction was to discuss Seachem Prime. If anybody out there doesn't know what Seachem Prime is, it is a dechlorinator. I add it even though I use RODI water and or distilled water and pure salt, I still add Prime because I've got teenagers. They're spraying perfume around the house. They're teenagers. They're freaking dirty, right? Okay, and they've got stuff everywhere, and they're knocking stuff everywhere, and there's just stuff in the air. So I use Prime in every single water change just to be safe, right? I don't dose enough for the entire water change or the entire tank. I just kind of squirt some in just because it makes me feel better. The reason that I like Prime so much is because it's not just a dechlorinator. It also counteracts any heavy metals. And if there's any ammonia present, it converts it into ammonium. Remember when we were talking about shipping, ammonium does not hurt seahorses, ammonia does. And it has to do with pH and all that. But Prime, literally, if you have a crisis and you have an ammonia spike in your tank, whether you know it or not, and you dose Prime, all of a sudden the fish are fine. I've had it happen with discus. I've had it happen, or freshwater discus. I've had it happen with freshwater angelfish. I've had it happen with seahorses where they were freaking out, gasping. I didn't know why. Still don't know why.
Just add the Prime.
Right, add the Prime, and all of a sudden they're
Put it
fine.
down.
And I will note, after I added the Prime, my first step is add Prime. My second step is start making water, right? Because no matter what's going on, the Prime is a Band-Aid. And I want to make that clear. I'm not trying to say Prime fixes the problem, right? But Prime can keep the animals alive while you try to fix the problem. So I'm making water to do a water change, and then I come back and they're fine. I still do the water change, right? Because something's wrong. Just because the Prime has saved them doesn't mean the problem is resolved. So I still do the water change, and then everything has worked out in my case. And in Brandy's situation, one of the things that hit me the most, as Holly mentioned, is that it was so sudden. I have another video out there about treating seahorses with a bacterial problem because of a temperature spike, but I literally had to figure out what caused the bacterial infection because they gradually got worse, as Holly was pointing out.
A
So
long time.
temp spike happened. I was like, oh my God. And I made the mistake because I was new of lowering the temperature too quickly caused all sorts of problems that didn't show right away. They seemed fine. They were still eating. Everything was fine. Then 2 weeks later, one stopped eating. Another one started getting really dark. And I'm like, what's going on? Nothing has changed. I don't get it. And we ended up, Dan helped me figure out, oh, it was that temp spike back then. They've got a bacterial issue. And I've got a video on how I treated them with furon 2 and triple sulfa. But my point is, with bacterial, it's just, in my opinion, Ray, Cheryl, correct me if I'm wrong, but with a bacterial infection, it's never bam.
No.
Right?
Never in my experience.
Right. So
Mhm.
bacterial, even if you're new and you don't notice the symptoms, it just still won't be, oh my God, they're freaking out and they're laying at the bottom of the tank. If that's
Mhm.
happening, in my opinion, it's ammonia, it's something from the air getting in the water, or it could be parasitical, but it just seems like if you've had them for a while and they're doing fine, that seems crazy to me too. Anything that immediate, I think, contaminant.
I've never
You
had
guys,
parasites do it that fast either.
right? Exactly.
Yeah, I was going to say that doesn't make sense to me either. Everything else is usually a slow demise.
Right.
My other thought right off the top of my head is if she was using city water is chlorinated as a precaution. And it can vary, the chlorine concentration can vary depending on who was taking care of the water that day.
Sure.
And I'm on a private well. I learned very early on, I'm going back 20 years or so ago, that the water coming out of my well sometimes has pathogens in it, can have pathogens in it. And I literally got to the point that every time I prepare water for a water change, I treat it with chlorine. I bring the temp to the same temp as the tank. I let it run for 24 hours. Then I add basically CChem or one of the dechlorinators.
Prime
And
or
I
yeah, right.
let it sit for at least an hour. I retest it to see if I'm showing any chlorine If so, I'm going to add some more dechlorinator. I use Amazon. I use Prime, but it's one of those things where I did it do it as a safety precaution.
Sure. Well, in this
Can I,
case, go ahead.
can I hop in real quick? Just because I missed the first half of the conversation.
Sure,
Okay,
go ahead.
so I have a 32-gallon bio cube. So anytime I'm going to take water out below the pump level, I have to shut everything off.
Yep.
I have my own ROD system, and the filters are all brand new. We just replaced them the week we bought the Seahorses. It's the
Mhm.
same RODI system that I've been using. I have a 110-gallon and the 32-gallon, and I've been using the RODI system water to top off my tanks when they run low. And I use it for my water changes for my big tank as well. So I was concerned about that too, but I think if it was my RODI water, I would have problems in both tanks.
You
And
Mhm.
the
know,
other
Yeah.
thing
I
is
agree.
And the fact
it
that
didn't,
your other fish were
my
fine
other fish were
was
fine.
strange.
So
And my
this was
pipefish,
this was
my
So wait,
isolated.
wait, wait,
pipefish is
wait, wait,
fine.
guys, time out. Brandy's new and she's our guest, so we're gonna let her talk first. And guys,
Sorry.
no, you don't be sorry. I'm saying sorry because we here on Wine Wednesday we love to talk, so we're gonna overtalk you anytime we can. But I'm telling us all, including me, to shush so Brandy can speak. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my shrimp are fine, my coral's fine, my pipefish is fine, my goby is fine. Like, it didn't bother anything but the seahorses, and it was within the hour after I turned my pumps back on that they started swimming erratically, almost like they were having seizures,
Mm-hmm.
and then they just fell to the bottom. So I scooped them out and I put them in my styrofoam bucket that I put water. When I take the water out of my aquarium to change it, I fill a bucket up before I dump the rest,
Yep.
just in case I need to save something.
Sure.
It's
Smart.
water, right? And so I scooped them out as soon as I was like, oh, this is really bad. Like, this is not normal behavior. I don't care, new or not. This shouldn't happen. I scooped them out and put them in there, but it was too late.
How long had you had them before this happened?
I had them a week because the tank was empty for 4 months. And then it had a sea urchin in it, but no real life. And then I slowly added, um,
The
I
Gobi.
added the goby first and some shrimp. And then I was like, well, let me get and I that go for a week to see how that did. And the goby seemed happy and fine. And my copepods are doing very well. And so I added the seahorses and they were happy. Like, they seemed happy. They were eating, no health issues that I noted. And
So I
then,
sorry, go ahead.
no, that's okay. And so then all of a sudden, a week later, I'm like, let me do my water change now. And they were
Well,
dead.
before we go forward, I just want to say again, thank you. I thanked you, Brandy, on the post, but I want to say, number one, we've all lost. If you are a seahorse keeper and you haven't lost a seahorse, then praise to you because we all have. So
Mhm.
people come forward and say, this is what's going on. This is what happened. Help me solve it. It helps others, right? Because and so don't anybody ever feel like I can't come and say I did, that this happened and I need to figure it out
Mhm.
because this is how we help each other. This is the community, right? So, and I have videos showing like half the stuff she just talked about because I've had every problem that she just described. So, just saying that, thank you for sharing. And Zen Ginger actually brought up a good point that we didn't make on the post. Have you checked for an electrical current? Maybe a heater malfunction or something. But Zen Ginger, here's the key. Sam and I went back and forth with Brandy trying to figure this out. And here's the problem with that comment is that everything else in the tank is fine.
Yeah,
Coral,
that's my
goby,
thing.
snails,
Yeah, everything
urchin,
else was
all
fine.
fine. So it's the seahorses that had the problem, which what are you thinking, Ray, Cheryl? because I don't want to say what I thought. I posted it,
Well,
but
okay. Well, what I'm gathering is this only affected the seahorses. The
right.
pipes and the other stuff in there were all fine. That says to me that they came in with something that they were already having serious problems. You know, typically, with especially wild caught seahorses, you're not going to see a change in behavior until they're on their last legs, so to speak. They're going to act very normal. They're going to try to do their best. And I'm suspecting if they were wild caught, they could have been carrying a bacterial infection that they were fighting, trying to look normal. And the move into the bucket was just enough of a change to set them off.
Well, hang on. 99% of the time, I would 100% agree with what everything you just said. But here's the problem with what you just said. First of all, they weren't having trouble because she moved them into the bucket. They were gasping and laying on the floor after a water change. And we'll discuss
Right.
what she did during the water change, which Sam and I think may have added to the problem. But bottom line is, they were fine eating. And I agree with you, bacterial infection takes a minute to show, but it still wouldn't be that immediate. They wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, she changed the water, so I'm going to freak out and this bacterial
It
infection is
shouldn't.
going
No,
to.
what I'm saying is there may have been something metabolically wrong
Sure.
with them already, and something was not. They didn't agree with in the water change bucket. But without having more information, it's really hard to say.
Sure.
I've been through enough successes and failures
Sure.
that sometimes you sit there and scratch your head and say, what went wrong? And other times you sit there and scratch your head and ask yourself, what did I do right?
Well, and that's what I kept telling Brandy. I hope you got that from the post, is that, like I said, we've all made these mistakes, and sharing helps everybody else. But one thing I do want to throw in, because, okay, let me just get to the end of the conversation and then we can discuss the middle. So the two things that Sam and I kind of hit on as we talked to Brandy, and Brandy, I hope you'll continue to chat with us, is number one, feeding, what she was feeding, and number two, how you do a water change. So when I say that, I mean, one of the key things is I have an all-in-one. So when you have a sump and you have pumps and you have different methods of airflow and you have different etc., when you do a water change, there's still moving water. In my all-in-one, because the water drops so low and the equipment's in the back and etc., when I do a water change, I have to turn everything off. The pumps have to go off, everything goes off. My one key thing that I mentioned to Brandy is, anytime I do a water change, I make sure that my airline, I have an open-ended airline that sticks in, just sits in the tank. It's weird, but they love it. And that, it's not good enough for, an everyday tank forever. But during a water change, as I'm messing stuff up, it's at least breaking the surface, and creating agitation and allowing it. So one of the things that we discussed with Brandy is, in her case, she did not have that going on. And then in the bucket where she moved the seahorses, she didn't have an airline going on. So that increases whatever's going on. Okay. So feeding and water changes. Where do we want to dive in? Sorry,
Okay,
I know
I got another quick question on this.
Yep.
Because when I do water changes, I rarely move the seahorse unless I'm breaking a tank down and going into a new tank that I've just set up. The water change is going to go on with them in the tank that they're in.
Sorry, I said that wrong. I meant, for instance, as I mentioned to Brandy,
Yeah.
when I do water changes in the all-in-one, I'm just picky. I know that nuisance algae isn't hurting anything, and it's actually helping the tank, right? It's part of the ecosystem, it's part of the biosystem, but I don't like it. So every single water change, I pull my rocks and I scrub them in tank water outside the
Yeah.
tank, and then I put them back in, and then every single time I end up with a cloudy ass tank that looks like crap. I know better. I know that what I'm doing is wrong, but I don't like the nuisance algae. So I'm messing with lighting and all this other stuff to try to fix it. But my point is, I also have a K1 media reactor. I have, I have other biofiltration besides the rock. I don't have sand in the tank, and we'll discuss sand in a minute because that's a big deal. But in my, like, I'm just saying, if I didn't have a K1 media reactor and I didn't have the char chamber, the RKC char chamber, then if I move those rocks out and I scrub them and I put them back in, I'm going to have a mini cycle, period. I probably am. I just happen to have other equipment that handles it for me. Does that make sense? How I'm saying it? I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so if you
I'm
have just a tank with rock and sand and you go to do a water change and you start moving stuff around, right? And you maybe scrub your rocks or you pick algae off, and then you're moving the sand around. You're disrupting the entire ecosystem. If you don't have a backup plan for your biofiltration, meaning nitrogen cycle and all that, then you're going to have a mini cycle and you're going to have an ammonia spike. And that's what I personally think happened in Brandy's case. Not her fault. She didn't know, but that's what I think happened.
Well, this
How
is
long start to finish was this change?
Brandy, are you still there? I know
No.
she's got something going on, so
Yeah.
and she just left. So I think it was, over an hour. And again, that shouldn't cause that much crisis. I agree.
No.
But think about it, Ray. Oh, she's trying to come back. Think about it, Ray.
I'm here.
If you okay, so Brandy,
There she is.
how long was the water change?
I would say about 30 minutes. So the
Oh.
pumps were probably off for 30 minutes.
Okay.
Then
So
And also, Brandy, you didn't put the seahorses in the bucket while you were doing
No.
the water
No.
change, right?
Just when I saw
Hold
that they
them.
were struggling.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
what percentage of water did you change?
I try to do a 20 to 30 once a month. So it was about between 20 to 30%.
You might find that down the road you're going to have to do a lot more than that anyway.
I agree
actually,
with
I
Ray.
don't think I ever got the answer. Brandy, how big is the tank total?
32.
32, sorry.
32,
Okay.
she
Correct.
said. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
So
what
yeah,
I'm
bigger
going
water
to do
changes.
is do a max of a 20% water change about every week and a half or so. And when I do that, I pull out one or two rocks and
Very
clean those rocks off in fresh salt mix, put them back in the tank. But I'm not trading out a lot of stuff. I'm not doing a lot of changes on the systems. And I think that makes a big difference too, because if they're already compromised or stressed, larger changes are going to can have a profoundly negative impact on seahorses. They can be very, very touchy about things.
I
And
can't see with her tank though that she would have had to do much in the way of cleaning anything that's in the tank. So basically, maybe cleaning out the filtration pads and changing the water. But
Well, she was cleaning sand and she was cleaning rocks and moving stuff. So Sam and I were just there's no answer. We're discussing this for a reason because there is no answer, right?
I suspect they came up from a fish store. They were probably wild caught. They were already they hide problems very well until it reaches a critical stage.
Well, let me add to your thoughts, Cheryl. Brandy, can you tell me what you were feeding them?
Yes. So I had live ghost shrimp, which is what the local fish store recommended. And I had copepods already established in my tank for about 4 months because I knew that I was going to get a mandarin goby. Now, the fish store said that they wouldn't eat the copepods, but they were eating them like crazy.
Right, because they were hungry. Right.
Well,
and they were eating the ghost shrimp as well.
So
they were,
Cheryl, sorry, Brandy, go ahead.
I was going to say, so they were definitely
eating, right?
Eating.
Absolutely. And Cheryl, I wanted to know, do you have any idea the nutritional profile of ghost shrimp? Are they, is that, because as I was talking to Brandy, I was like, oh, you'll have such an easier time if you buy seahorses that are already trained onto frozen foods, right? But the thing is, we also say live foods are better for seahorses. Depending on the food.
Yeah.
So I'm asking you, is ghost shrimp nutritionally?
Ghost shrimp are not going to have the same HUFA and DPA.
Okay.
parameters that you want in an optimal food environment, because those are basically lipids that are specific to saltwater species. Ghost shrimp are typically live close to shore. I mean, we can go down to, well, I'm not going down the Gulf these days, but you could go down the Gulf and catch some. There's a big difference between them and mysis shrimp versus the true mysid shrimp that are our true saltwater species. I personally, if I'm feeding live food, I'm feeding the actual saltwater mysid shrimp or things like peppermint shrimp, things like that. But because I'm not going to feed them halfway. That's the other reason when I can't get shrimp, if I need to, I'm using with saltwater amphipods. The other thing to keep in mind is look at the size. If you feed try to feed them little bitty copepods and newborn amphipods, they are not going to get the kind of food quantity they need to grow and mature and survive long term.
So again,
Yep,
as I
it
said,
makes
and as
money
I
for the
go
store
ahead,
though.
Ray. Go ahead.
Like
Ray?
I can't believe any reputable salesperson that's knowledgeable on seahorses would ever tell somebody to feed or feed them ghost shrimp. But a store, I could see
True.
doing it, especially if they don't know anything, which is most stores. Um, if they don't know anything about them, they can tell you to feed the ghost shrimp because they're expecting you to buy the ghost shrimp from them.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the bottom line is that Brandy wants to keep seahorses. So she had
Don't
this
buy
terrible
there
thing
again.
happen. So let's discuss moving forward. Because I mean, honestly, guys, sometimes in these kind of cases, and I do see all the comments. I swear I'm going to get to them. I promise. But I'm trying to keep the convo going here. So in this case, Sam and I thought that it was disrupting the sand. Toxins being released, possibly something in the air getting in the water, whatever. That's what the conclusion we came to. Then we heard about the feeding and we thought, oh, maybe it goes along with what Cheryl was saying. Maybe they were wild caught and it was just a problem that was escalating that had nothing to do with Brandy and it would have happened either way. So my question to you guys, go ahead, Holly. Say what you want to say and then I'll ask my question.
I think it's a combination, and that was my first when I first read it, and my comment to her was they likely had something wrong from the beginning,
Right.
and the stress of the water change exaggerated that. Something about it, they were sensitive to something about the water change because she didn't lose the other fish or anything else but those things. My take on it, they were probably wild caught. Like you said, they probably had deteriorating health in the beginning, and the stress of everything caused them to
Yeah,
freak out.
it sounds like they were already malnourished. They were not being fed properly in the store. And the thing is, if you work with seahorses, they can look great right up until a half hour before they're dead.
Right, right.
Literally, literally.
So the one thing I did want to make sure we touch on before we move forward to comments and anything Brandy wants to talk about is what do you do now? So say you had this experience, you don't really know what really happened, but you lost your seahorses and it sucks. And nothing else was hurt. So it's got something to do with either the seahorses or the water change. Either way, you don't know. How do you prepare your tank to add new and better seahorses?
I would set up a quarantine tank, which is what I always do anyway when I bring in new seahorses.
Okay.
Put them in that. Make sure they're getting a very highly nutritious diet in the form of, well, if they're going to feed live foods. First of all, if they're captive bred, they shouldn't need live food, period. I use it as a supplement, and it's fun to watch them, and they enjoy it. But so get specifically captive bred that are eating frozen that you can deal with. Set them up in a separate quarantine tank that's fully cycled and watch them closely. I've had seahorses that I've gone 6 months before I decided they were actually going to survive. So, I mean, it can be, you can be in for a long haul. Watch them, make sure they're eating. If they're eating well, if they're playing, if they're moving around, if they're dancing with each other, you're good to go. If
Yeah,
they're
but
just
her
hanging out,
seahorses were doing that, right?
yeah. If they're just hanging around and hitching and not eating, I mean, maybe for the first day or two, they might be a little stressed out. Normally, if they're captive bred, nothing much stresses them out. They just go. I mean, normally I leave them in there for about 30 minutes, throw some live food in, and kick back and laugh because they're all going nuts with a new shipment. So it doesn't.
Wait, real quick, Cora Works, I see, and I'm going to answer every question you've asked, I promise. But in this case, no. Basically, what happened was she got the seahorses after establishing the tank, having other critters that were seahorse safe, coral that was seahorse safe. Everything was fine. She was misled by her LFS on feeding seahorses based on the seahorses she bought. She was feeding ghost shrimp and copepods, but they were eating and they were happy and they were fine. She did a
Well, and I
water
will say
change.
I was
Yes.
feeding frozen myces because I had the clownfish and pipefish in there. So I don't know that
And
they were eating it, but it was in there.
okay, so you don't know, but you were trying to feed it right. And so basically the problem was she did a water change and all of a sudden the seahorses freaked out, didn't do well. She pulled them as she should have to try to figure out what was going on, and they passed away.
They
Like
were already stressed.
random,
Yeah, they were already stressed,
crazy.
already debilitated, had not been on a good nutritional profile, and in true seahorse fashion, they can look great until unfortunately, you pick them up out of the tank from the bottom of the tank.
I
And
still
If
think
you're
that they
feeding
are
the,
just more sensitive than other fish, right? Not that they're so difficult to keep that we can't, but I still stand by what Sam and I discussed, about if you don't have other biofiltration in your tank, make sure number one, you have oxygenation via an airline or something when you turn all your pumps off to do the water change.
yeah,
And don't do a massive cleaning every water change, right?
agreed. And
So
also,
hang on, I talk about the fact that I get a cloudy tank every stinking week because I scrub my rocks outside the tank in old tank water, and I still get a cloudy tank, even though
yeah,
I have extra biofiltration to handle that, it still ends up cloudy and a mess. Whereas if I just let the rocks alone, or if you have sand in your tank, if you only do a portion at a time, we always say don't clean the entire sand bed. I'm just trying to make points as we go here,
yeah.
but go ahead, Cheryl.
Remember too, they have a very rudimentary gill structure. They do not basically bring in O2 through the water the way other fish do. And as such, they are more likely to develop hypoxia if they're lacking good aeration in a tank. That's one of the things I'm really careful about, is making sure. I typically will run a couple of open-ended airline tubes in a 58-gallon tank, sometimes more, depending on how many I have in the tank at a time. And for the longest time, I've used hyperoxygenation in my tanks.
Right. And in Brandy's case, she didn't know. I mean, that's why
Yeah.
we're here, is to share with each other, to help each other, but she didn't know. So when she pulled the seahorses and put them in the old tank water, there was no oxygenation. She didn't have an airline or anything. So right, then it led to even more problems, which wasn't on her. It's just she didn't know. But I still think at this point there's no way we're gonna know the actual problem and what happened. But I will say, if you have a smaller tank and you do a massive water change, you have to be ready with something like Prime or alternative biofiltration, because you're likely to have ammonia spike. That's my opinion, but I'm going to
Well,
stick to it.
the other thing is I love Prime. Anytime I've got a new tank, it gets primed on a regular basis for the first few weeks while I'm watching the seahorses in the tank. The problem with it is it will give you a false reading of ammonia because it converts the ammonia to ammonium for 24 to 48 hours. And that's where that gets kind of tricky also.
Ray, you said if Brandy wasn't,
If,
go ahead.
if she wasn't feeding that tank until she got that first fish and then the seahorses afterwards, I doubt very much that there could be enough accumulation in that sand bed to cause a problem when trying to clean it with the water
Well,
change.
this is why we have these discussions, is to try to, nitpick it. But honestly, Brandy, it's just a shit situation, and I'm sorry you had it. And we're gonna get into discussing what you should do now. But Ray, the other thing is, she was feeding the tank. She was adding copepods, making sure her mandarin was fed.
Well, there's a big difference in copepod adding or frozen mysis adding.
Frozen
Some
mysis,
people,
yeah.
they want to keep the cycle going by adding frozen mysis and that kind of thing. And if she did that for 4 months, then sure, the sand bed can definitely have a buildup then.
Well, and I don't know
But
if it matters that it was established for years with fish and coral in it before. So, like during that couple of years, of course, they were being fed. I mean, I cleaned the sand, but probably not. I probably didn't get everything out of it from years of
Sure.
having coral and fish in it. And then it sat empty for a couple of months. I don't know if everything would have been cleaned up by then or if there would have still been fish waste and food buried in the sand. I don't know.
Well, and not
yeah,
just
it's actually better to start off with a sterile tank when you're getting into seahorses.
well, but I mean that's not really fair. And I wish Dan was here because I really want to dive into peroxide and other methods that you can use because when I had, let's say, Erectus in a tank, and then they moved to another tank or whatever, and then I was going to get Cuda, and you don't want to mix Erectus and Cuda, so I called Dan and I said, "How do I make the tank better or whatever to make sure the Cuda are okay?" And his answer was always peroxide. So I guess the question is now, she's had this tank that's been established for a long time. She left it, with just, little critters, not overfeeding, etc. She had this terrible experience. Now she wants to clean it up and get seahorses. Cheryl mentioned quarantine, but what do we do to the tank to make sure it's safe for seahorses?
Yeah, I didn't realize it had been used before.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Sorry.
I would just start following, like, the advice we gave you about temperature
Sure.
and the correct pH, what things can live with them safely, make sure it's set up for the seahorses, and go forward from there with captive bred seahorses, get them from a reputable breeder so you know where they're from, that they're captive bred, they won't have any issues.
Exactly.
Actually, that's a question, Brandy. The seahorses at the LFS, were they there for quite a while? I mean, do you see seahorses there often?
No, and as a matter of fact, where I live, they're very hard to come by. So that's why when I actually bought two at one fish store and one at another. Now ran by the same local guy. He just has
Sure.
two different locations. And so one was brown and the other two were white. But I mean, I had to ask them to save them for me when they got their shipment because they're really hard to find around here right now.
And not your like address, but what state are you located in?
Florida.
Really? They're hard to find in Florida. That's incredible
Yeah.
to me.
They
That-
said
But
that they
that's
normally get regular shipments of like, 10 or 12 a week, but lately they might get one or two or not any at all. So,
well, number one, I would say, heck, I'm having trouble getting salt, so I hear you. And number two, I would say in Florida, you're much more likely to end up with wild caught seahorses. And
Yep.
Yes.
if you're an experienced seahorse keeper, to each their own. But as Ray was just saying in the comment section, in our little personal comment section, risk tolerance level, if there are places, like if you're willing to spend the money to get captive bred seahorses, Seahorse Savvy is a great alternative. I wish Seahorse Source was still going, but or people within the community that have captive bred their seahorses, because that's like I live in Indiana, so there's no wild caught seahorses anywhere. I can't get them if I wanted them. Like I want to breed, so I would possibly be interested in wild caught, because I know how to condition them and do the treatments and all that, and I have Dan on the side. But I can't get them here. Everything's captive
Same
bred.
here.
But the thing is, it's so much easier for me because these seahorses can be plopped in a tank. They eat frozen foods. They don't have the problems. I don't have to treat with anything. And unfortunately, I think you just didn't get that experience because of where you are and because there's apparently a shortage.
Yeah.
And sometimes you gotta spend the money for captive bred to get the better seahorses. But I do, and unfortunately, obviously, we're not going to dive too deep into it because Dan's not here, and I don't know the exact percentage. But another thing you can do is add a little bit of peroxide to your tank when you're trying to get it to the point where you're lowering organics, lowering any kind of, not parasitical, but just making the tank better, right? I don't have the scientific way to say it. Cheryl, do you use peroxide?
I use hydrogen peroxide to clean stuff.
But you don't use it to dose.
I have not necessarily dipped it in the tank, although it really shouldn't be a problem unless you use a bunch of it. You need to just watch your pH and make sure you don't drop your pH too much when you do that. And
Right.
it is a very effective cleaning tool. But then I also use Dan's, I buy 35% Clorox type.
Right. Well, no, I was just saying, I just remember the time that
Yeah.
I had Erectus in a tank. I didn't want to break it down because it was established, it was ready to go, but I
Yeah.
knew that I didn't want to mix Erectus with Cuda. So if I had Erectus in there, whatever pathogens they may have been carrying were in the tank, and I didn't want to add the Cuda. And I remember he put me on a dosage of hydrogen peroxide in the tank to kind of clear it out. I'll have to, Brandy, I'll get with you on the side on that one. Because I
Randy,
would
I
definitely.
have a question, a couple questions real quick. You
Mhm.
said that they seahorses for white, and how big were they?
They were probably 1, 2, maybe 3 inches with their tail curled. I never straightened them out to look.
Well, no, that's
That's pretty
close
big.
enough.
Yeah.
And what color were they? Were they white?
2 of them were white with like thin brown stripes, and one of them was dark brown.
The ones with the white stripes do not sound like Erectus.
Well, white stripes, she might mean saddles.
Yeah,
Possible.
maybe.
The thing is, there's what's their name? They just recently opened up, and Alicia is working for them. Anyway, they've recently opened up, and there's have a place outlet in Florida. Alicia, of course, is a private breeder, and she does some lovely work. 3 inches, even at 3 inches, in my opinion, people sell them at 3 inches. I will not sell a seahorse until it's at least 4 inches. But then I'm picky because they're my babies.
Right.
Yeah. I have a question for you, Brandy. What kind of substrate do you have? Is it crushed coral or sand or
I have live sand.
live sand? Okay.
Yeah, the sand shouldn't be a big deal normally.
No, I was thinking crushed coral is
Yeah,
bad. Sand is not.
that's a problem.
I think
But if you had the sand a long time, or you're like as long as you had the tank, maybe there was something in there that you released cleaning it that affected not the others. I don't
Yeah,
know, but
I
so
mean,
so sudden, it sounds like a type of poisoning of some kind to me.
that's everything we came down to. And Brandy, I just want to say again, it sucks. I mean, it
Yeah.
sucks, and it's not you. You just
Don't
had
give
a
up. Don't
bad
give up. Just
experience.
start
Don't give
over.
up. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. They're wonderful.
And
Yeah, I think you can
I just want
probably
to
have.
know how to do it right this time.
well, I don't think you're doing anything wrong. I just think if you can buy captive bred, that's going to be much easier. And you know, when you buy seahorses, I always say, like, if you are going to buy them from an LFS, ask what they're eating. If they're not eating frozen mysis, that's kind of a red flag, right? And if you buy captive bred from a personal breeder like Alyssa Seahorse Savvy, they're more expensive, but you don't have to deal with this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
They just are happy and they just
Yeah.
live and they're just great.
You, you can see horses that are going to be eating a nice big dinner an hour after they've arrived home to
Oh,
their new
yeah.
home.
right. I feed, I don't even like,
You don't have to mess with live food. I don't feed mine live food at all.
I was going to say, I usually try to give my seahorses, especially if I want them to breed, I give them live treats. Like I'll enrich Artemia or I'll buy some mysids and enrich them. But I haven't been lately, even though I want them to breed. I'm lazy. And, you know, it's just so easy. You have frozen food in the freezer, you just plop it in and they eat it and it's great and you're done, right? I mean, you clean it up, but I'm just saying, I think you just got a bad deal. I don't think it was your fault.
Yeah.
I think you just got a bad deal. And I would look into maybe talking to your LFS and saying, are these captive bred seahorses? And if they're not, knowing that when you buy wild caught seahorses, like, I used to be like, never buy wild caught seahorses. That's so bad. And I will still say that to anyone new. But now that I understand the industry a little bit better, we need wild caught seahorses. Experienced breeders need them to bring new blood into the bloodline, right? And to produce new captive bred seahorses. But a newcomer should never have to deal with wild caught seahorses because you're talking about, you don't know if it's worms, you don't know if it's parasites, you don't know if it's, you don't know what they have. And there's so many treatments that conditioning includes. So again, I just think you got a raw deal. I think you should look for captive bred seahorses, talk to your LFS, find out why they're not selling captive bred seahorses. Maybe you'll end up the next breeder that provides them captive bred seahorses. There you go.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, if you're not experienced with seahorses, it's easy to make a mistake and get wild caught seahorses and not even realize that you're getting them. This is why you want to go with somebody that has a seriously good reputation,
Sure.
because then you are know 100%. Not only are they selling you something that they believe in and have been worked on for years, but they stand behind what they're selling.
Great. And I'll show you guys real quick what I'm talking about. I keep mentioning Alyssa Seahorse Savvy because I loved Seahorse Source, but he's unfortunately not doing it anymore. So this is who I'm talking about, Seahorse Savvy. And look at those gorgeous, huge
And she
seahorses.
has great advice too on the
Yes.
site of how
Oh,
to
yeah.
keep them. Like,
Yep.
you know, the accurate information of what can live with them,
Yep.
you know, things about their parameters. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely a good source for information and for seahorses.
Yep. And so, you know, she has what you can get. She describes the seahorses. They're
It's,
They're
bigger.
guaranteed.
They eat frozen mice.
Yeah,
They're much more expensive. I mean, that
yeah, they're not they're not cheap, but they're definitely worth it. They're healthier.
for sure. And the other thing is to check with and I you know, you said Florida. I don't.
Ocean Rider?
Ocean Rider's great. Let's show Ocean Rider real quick.
I
I
at
have
this
a
right
pair.
now, to be honest, there's nothing wrong with Ocean Rider themselves. However, they've been having problems potentially shipping, and they backed off for a while. I got an order from them. It took 7 days to get from Hawaii to Texas.
Well,
See,
that was during COVID,
yeah,
though.
Cheryl,
I'll say.
I've not
Yeah.
had any trouble with
And
Ocean
they're
Rider.
not going to ship over summer. They have a certain time of year they ship. So you want to pay attention to that. I think we're getting to
Oh,
the
yeah.
end of that.
They had
And
some
then they'll
lovely.
start shipping again, I think, in September. They won't ship during the summer when it's real hot.
Yeah, because they're
But
definitely very careful. Try to be very careful in terms of what the weather's doing.
Sure, but I'm feeling really stupid, you guys. I can't even find where you buy them. What the heck? What am I doing wrong here?
Seahorse.com.
That's where I'm at. Oh,
What's the
Seahorse
name
is
of
in
the new
specials.
company
There
that?
it is.
So
There it
they
is.
have
I
different
found it.
things on the site
So
because
it's a
they
little
also
weird,
have a facility you can tour. It's like a park.
but
So
they
there's
have some sales. And I have two Ocean Rider seahorses. I have two Vincent seahorses. I have one Holly seahorse, and I would say that's the other thing is that you can also check with local clubs if you have a reef club or
yeah,
anything like that. Not everyone does, but
So when you say expensive, like, give me a ballpark idea of what you mean. Like, what would it?
$100 plus.
yep.
Okay, okay.
So how much
Like
did you?
I see, sometimes I've seen I'm in California. And so they're not native here. It's like where you are, it's rare to see them in stores. We never have captive bred, but when they do have seahorses, they tell me they sell them between $30 and $60,
Okay, that's what I
which
paid.
yeah, is that's normal fish price. When you buy captive bred, you're likely to pay over $100 unless you know the seller.
Right.
You know, like one of us, or I don't have any right now. I don't have any that I'm raising. But sometimes somebody who is in the hobby that does their own captive breeding
Yep.
might have some available.
Well, the thing is,
And that's a good
yeah,
source too, because we know what we're doing, we know how to take care of them, we can coach you along and give you a better price than the big commercial breeders. But honestly, my seahorses originally came from Melissa's Seahorse Savvy, and I've been very happy with them. I had some that were breeding. I raised some of those ones to adult, and it's been a wonderful experience. So I would say start looking into captive bred and get a tank ready specifically for them and what they require.
yeah.
Well, and I think her tank is pretty much set up fine for seahorses. I
Yeah.
really do. And Ray, you just said Vincent possibly, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know whether he's got any left though.
Yeah. Well, we need to check with him
Yeah.
because the bottom line is, when you buy wild caught, it's just you just never know. You're gonna have to deal with all these problems. Cheryl, what were you gonna
Mhm.
say?
I was going to say, if you can buy from some of the hobbyists. I know when I started getting 80, 90, 3.5 to 4 inch seahorses, they got to find some new homes, and I don't have
Yeah,
them right now.
Right.
right.
But you might be able to find somebody that lives near you that has seahorses you wouldn't have to ship, or if you do have to ship, it'd be a short distance. And a lot of us, we try when we're working with people, we try to walk them through how to be
Mhm.
successful with it. Because trust me, everybody that's on here has made their mistakes in the past prior to getting proficient at what they're doing. It's not something that happens overnight. And it's one of those things where it's nice to have a shoulder to lean on. I love it when I get these calls. So he got his head stuck in a rock. What do I do? It sounds crazy, but uh, I mean, I get we have what's called the San Antonio Aquarium. They call me when they get a sick seahorse or when they have new fry.
Sure. Because you know what you're doing.
Well,
And Brandy, I would say I'm gonna get with you on the side about possibly using a little peroxide in the tank just to clean it up. But I gotta get the dosage from Dan, so I'll message you on the side. But did you? Because there's a couple questions in the comments that aren't related to this topic, but I want to make sure that you got all your questions answered. I know it sucks. There's no actual answer, but I mean, do you feel better about the conversation? You know, you didn't do anything wrong. It just sucks.
Yeah, and I appreciate you guys taking so much time to go over everything.
Oh no, that's every time we have a problem. Believe me, we've spent multiple
We've
months.
all been there.
I was gonna say
We've all had issues
we've
with
spent
Seahorse.
multiple Wine Wednesdays just talking about my glass, right? I mean, it's just the entire episode.
hey,
So no, that's what we're here for.
And have you checked out the files on Seahorse Sources group?
What was it, Ray?
Mhm. The
Has she
files
checked
on
out the
Seahorse.
files
yeah.
on Seahorse Sources
I'm
group?
going to share the files in the comment section, Brandy, and I'll share them with you personally. And
Thank
I'm
you.
going to work with you personally just because I know you want to do seahorses, and I think you just got a raw deal. So we're going to help you figure this out.
Yeah.
I do.
Definitely.
Guys, I got to be up at 5 a.m. I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to rush through this, but I have to get to the other questions. Zen Ginger said, if I'm going to use one or more char chambers, I assume I would set those up when setting up the tank, correct? There's no reason to wait for a cycle or anything, right? Thoughts?
You'd set them up anytime.
Okay.
They just cycle themselves. You know, they can be part of it when you're first cycling the tank, or you can throw them in later. Or
Yeah, but you can't just throw them in and throw fish in.
Right. You don't count
yeah,
on
they're
it.
not going to be instant cycling. Yeah, they're just going to cycle like anything else would. But you can add them anytime.
Sure. And
They're just
in
gonna
the meantime, they act as like a chemical absorbent, right? I mean, they do what
yeah, they're
char would do,
charcoal.
right?
But yeah, exactly, like regular charcoal.
Okay, with an RODI system, I'm assuming no dechlorinator used right. I know sometimes sulfur-based dechlorinators can cause low oxygen conditions, especially if the water is warm and there are chloramines. And I've heard, I remember Dan saying something about he doesn't like to just like throw prime in or whatever because it can cause oxygenation issues. I've never experienced it. I throw prime in everywhere all the time. So I don't have any other.
Are you using prime or are you using the regular prime or the fancy prime?
Chem Prime. That's it. I can grab the bottle if you want to see it. But I use it constantly because I've got shitty water, guys. Sorry. So even though I'm using RDI, or sometimes I even buy distilled if my filters are, failing, I still throw prime in because the seahorses just seem happier. I don't know. Because again, I stir up the shit. I need to stop cursing. But I scrub my rocks outside the tank. I stir up the tank. I scrub the bottom. I scrub the sides. So I always end up with cloudy. And I just always feel like it's a deeper discussion for another day. But I always feel like seahorses, gills, their rapid breathing, that stuff's getting in there, right? I mean, it's got to irritate them. I feel like when the tank's cloudy and stuff's flying everywhere, they don't like it.
I'm laughing because back around 2010, we had an extreme drought and basically none of us had any running water at all because we all live out in the country. So I put in a 1,600-gallon tank to hold water. That was for flushing the toilet and that kind of stuff. My seahorses got special, fancy, expensive distilled water from the tank.
Yeah.
Right, of course. Well, and I would say to Cora Works, I always have airlines, open-ended airlines in my tank. I said that to Brandy too. During a water change, when I have to turn off the pumps because it's an all-in-one and it doesn't have a sump, I make sure there's still oxygenation. So maybe that's why I get away with it. You probably might be right. I'm not a scientist. I don't know about chloramines and blah, blah, blah. But bottom line is I use prime all the time. I
I
squirt it in.
never do.
See?
I never do that. When I do my water changes, I just add the water. Now I do have char chambers
Right, other stuff.
and bubbler stuff in the tanks, but I haven't always. And I just changed the water, and it would take sometimes like an hour to change water, in the display tank. So I don't know. I've never had that kind of issue.
Well, I have. I've had, and I talked to people in the group about discus. I've come home to multiple tanks where I had no idea what
Mhm.
happened. I wasn't even doing a water change. I just came home and the fish are gasping and they're laying on the ground. And I'm like,
Yeah.
did my kid spray perfume? What's going on? Is there some, like carbon monoxide? I have no idea what happened. There's no
Mhm.
answer. Like in Brandy's
Yeah.
case, that might be the case. But bottom line is, when I added Prime, started to make new water, they were better.
Mhm.
I still did the water
Mhm.
change, but
Yeah.
sometimes there's just not an answer. You just do the next best
Yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah.
And Zen Ginger said there's two different groups of beneficial bacteria. I think there's actually three, aren't there? But anyways, right. One converts ammonia into nitrites. One converts nitrites into nitrates. And absolutely, doesn't mean no nitrate. Yeah. And Dan has told me,
But she had no nitrite reading either.
right, she had no
There wasn't
readings.
nitrites or everything, all the readings came out okay. Now, I have a question though. How fast does an ammonia spike happen? Could it possibly happen so fast that you read a few minutes later and it's gone?
Or so slow that you do a reading and it doesn't show up, but it's there.
Yeah,
I
is
don't
that
know.
possible? I don't know enough about it.
Yeah,
Me either.
the thing is, it will give a different coloration if it's producing ammonium, which means basically it's got ammonia and it's temporarily converted it to ammonium. And again, it depends on your test kits what kind of readings you're going to get. That's where it gets tricky.
Right, but Cheryl, you're a
Well, I mean,
scientist
it's
person.
water.
How fast does the ammonia register?
No, but
So,
to give you
How fast can it spike and convert?
right.
right. And then it'll spike, usually take 24 to 48 hours. Then you'll get, if you've got ammonia in the tank, which you will if you get an ammonium reading, it's going to read regular ammonia instead of some crazy other mess.
Let me ask it
Well, I'm
in a
talking
wait, hang on,
without
hang on. Let me ask it in a much simpler way. If I dumped ammonia into my tank, a cupful, right? I dumped ammonia, straight ammonia.
That's me.
How fast would it register if I tested?
Virtually instantaneously.
Okay.
How
All right.
fast would it go away?
If you had a cycle tank.
Depends how much you dump in and what system is built up to take care
Yeah.
of it.
See, that's the problem. Is there's
Too many variables.
It's not going to happen immediately. It's going to take time, regardless of how, unless you put in
That's
a
what
couple
I
drops.
was thinking.
Shows
So an
up instant,
ammonia
but
spike can't just happen like that and go away like that.
no.
Okay. That's what I was trying to get.
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
no, it can't.
they even say that this will retain the color of ammonium for 24 to 48 hours, and then it will go back.
Well, and when Sam and I were discussing this with Brandy, she had to go apparently, but I was asking if the reaction was similar to the video I did on ammonia poisoning. I didn't think that her seahorses were actually poisoned by ammonia. As
But
Sam
something
said,
else
when you disrupt it, you don't know what you're disrupting.
That's why you don't
Detritus,
mess with the
I
sand
mean,
bed.
everything, like if you clean it
Mhm.
constantly, or if you do portions every week, just a little bit every time, that's different. But if you, like, when I mess with my tank, it's a cloudy mess and the seahorses breathe funny for a minute. I mean, they do, because there's
Yeah.
crap in the water. and they breathe it in. And
This is-
again, they're different than other fish because of their gills and because of their systems, and so it's better not to do that, I guess, is the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean,
Don't
this is
don't
why I
mess with
run everything I have is bare bottom, first of all.
Mhm.
And I actually keep a separate tank that I feed all the time to keep rock going and cycling, because
Mhm.
that way, if I have to, I can pull out a rock and replace a rock.
Yep. I have K1 that sits cycling, but I
Yeah.
need to get more rocks sitting there because I do
And
scrub my rocks every week and end up with a mess. Shiloh wanted to know, and this is a good point that
Mhm.
I didn't
That
make.
was my opinion too.
So we've talked
Why
about,
nothing else affected?
right, but we've talked about the differences between pipefish and seahorses. They're all cygnathids, but typically when you're talking wild caught, you don't want to mix them because they can carry different pathogens. I'm going down a rabbit hole. Back to the question. Aren't pipefish just as sensitive as seahorses? I don't think they are. I really don't think they are. You can put pipefish in a reef tank and they can survive and do well. Seahorses, not so much. Ray, you're shaking your head. Do you disagree?
I didn't shake my
Oh, I
head.
thought you did. Sorry. But I mean,
No.
in Brandy's tank, she has pipefish. They're fine.
okay, I have a dear friend who had a huge tank. It was basically set up with what I call a quasi reef tank. And he kept pipes in there, some beautiful, I mean, some really beautiful, big, healthy pipes. But the thing was, the stuff that he was with, he had stuff that like gobies and things like that were non-aggressive and didn't hassle the pipes. I would
Right.
put a
So,
pipe in with a lionfish.
right. Back to the question, Cheryl. So, in Brandy's tank, where she lost these seahorses, she has a goby, she has some cleanup crew, she has some pipefish, and she had
And a
seahorses.
and a
This
clownfish.
and a
She
clown.
had a
She
clown.
did have a clownfish. So all of a sudden, after her water change, the seahorses started freaking out, gasping, laying at the bottom of the tank. She removed them and she lost them. But the pipefish were fine. Why?
Did she move all the fish to the bucket when she
No.
cleaned?
No,
She
she only moved the seahorses
after
when
they
they
freaked out.
started
I'll
dying.
give you.
Right.
When
I'll give you.
after the
Don't no,
water
Cheryl,
change.
don't give us an example. I mean, tell us what you think about this situation.
All right, that's what I was going to say. It sounds
Okay.
to me there was something in the bucket that she put the seahorses into.
No. The
No,
seahorses
they
were
were
freaking out in the
reacting
tank.
is why she put them in the bucket. So
Ah,
she cleaned the tank with the seahorses in it, and after the water change, they started freaking out. So she took them out and put them in a bucket to try to save them.
Right. Hospital tank.
my best guess would be that they were already having serious issues, and something stressed them.
Yeah, I know. And I think
Mhm.
you're right, but it just bothers me
Mhm.
because that doesn't make sense to me. Because any of the issues that come with wild caught would be gradual. I mean, they wouldn't be so immediate. This water change caused them to
Yeah.
freak out and die. And it just,
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
unfortunately, there isn't an answer unless we
Yeah,
had
we
water
can't answer
samples
that.
and, scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. It still sucks though, because
Without having a pathologist look at it, then we're not ever going
it
to know.
still
Yeah,
sucks. But
true.
anyways, let's see. So, Shyla, yeah, I don't know why it didn't affect the pipefish, but I
Yeah.
am of the opinion, I have no scientific proof, but I
I,
think pipefish are different than seahorses,
yeah.
meaning just their body chemistry,
Well,
their gill structure. I just think pipefish are able to handle more.
yeah. Pipefish were notoriously difficult to work with for years, and people had terrible luck with them. But they actually seem to be fairly hardy, and they don't have this. Of course, they don't have. Well, there are species that pipes that do hitch, but they don't stay in one place. They do not tend to move quickly or get too concerned about much of anything. And I've sat and watched them for hours, and they're like, "Yeah, manana, I'll get it tomorrow." They just are very, very much themselves.
Yep. Ray, I understand you have to go. I appreciate you coming. We're not going to last much longer, guys, because I got to be up at 5 a.m. But I want to get through the questions. So, Ray, thank you for coming. Have a
Okay,
good
good
night.
night,
Good
all.
night, Ray. Hope you feel better.
Yes. Andrea did say when you do a freshwater dip, don't the seahorses thrash around like she's describing. So maybe the same type parasites affected by the water change. Um, maybe. You know, it's so up in the air at this point, but I just don't see that much of an immediate reaction because in a freshwater dip, you're changing the salinity drastically,
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah.
In a water change, you're not. So good point.
Yeah.
I don't see that.
unless you're already so far gone.
But they weren't. They were
Slight
eating.
change
That's like
in the
when
specific
Brandy.
gravity.
But when Brandy posted, I'm like mad myself because if that happened to me, I'd be so shitty. But she didn't. I
Yeah.
mean, it just sometimes it happens, guys. And Coro said something hydrogen sulfide in the substrate. Right, Coro, come in here and tell us the something because that's what I do. I'm like, yeah, there's
Yeah.
the
What could it be?
gas
What
release, but
chemical
I don't know the
what
scientific
in
shit.
there affected them that didn't affect anybody else?
Right.
That's what I'm really curious to know.
Yeah.
So I'm right there with you, Coro. Something hydrogen sulfide, right?
Yeah.
And if we can ever get Dan back in here, something hydrogen peroxide can maybe fix the tank for the next time. But
Hey,
what, Cheryl?
well, one thing I learned when I was a little kid, Little Willie was a little chemist. Little Willie is no more. What he thought was H2O was H2SO4.
Oh God, Cheryl, don't go scientific on that. Shyla said some fish are sorry. Shyla said some fish are hardy, for example, clownfish, which some people use to cycle their tanks. Please don't do that.
Yeah.
Right, and she doesn't recommend that. But absolutely some fish. But that's the key that bugs me so much about Brandy's story. How can you have pipefish do fine?
Hmm.
And the
Yeah.
seahorses freak out and die. That's so, and it might be something we're not even thinking of. We're talking about disrupting sand,
Well, and
disrupting
I
the
had
tank.
asked
It could
her
be that
too,
the
there's
pipefish and
coral in there.
seahorses had pathogens that didn't work together.
Well, and I don't know what kinds of coral she had in there because she has coral. And I asked her,
It
is
was
it
all soft.
possibly one of the coral released something? Because I don't know enough about coral to know. But it sounds like that wasn't an issue either
Nope.
in this
It-
case. So it's to
It's
me
yeah.
like my
It's like
whole take on it was they were already having issues and there was
but
enough
they
of a change
weren't.
somehow to stress them.
But they weren't already having issues. That's what bugs me. And I am gonna hit Dan up on this, guys. And the
Well, I
other
think
thing
it
is
may not
what I
have been
really
obvious.
but what I really care about is helping Brandy move forward,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Let's not let her have the same
Yeah.
experience. And we've talked a lot about what could have gone wrong, getting captive
Hmm.
bred. But I'm going to hit Dan up and I'm going to talk more about, how to prepare the tank. That's what I want to dive into because that was one of my main concerns because I'm not Cheryl and I'm not breaking
Hmm.
down every tank every time something bad happens, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
lazy and I just
Yeah.
want to fix the tank and not immediately add new seahorses because you got to give it a minute. Something's wrong. But I
Hmm.
mean, I don't want to break it all down and bleach it. I know that's the correct answer, Cheryl, but I'm freaking
Hmm.
lazy and I don't want to do that. So I want to find
Yeah.
answers for people like me that, okay, here's another
Well, and you're
alternative.
thinking too, if everyone else in the tank is
Right.
okay,
Yeah, it doesn't
what's
make
the one
sense.
thing that made it different for the seahorse's outcome than the other fish?
Yeah.
Yep.
The thing is, I've got, you have to understand, I have extra, 60-gallon tanks sitting here that don't have water in them right now. And
Mhm.
I have the liberty of being overly uh, cautious when setting up tanks and setting up new tanks. And it's something that is like, my son looks at me and goes, "You're not filling another tank, are you?" And it's one of those things that I do. I guess I have too many extra tanks. I've got 3 on my front porch right now.
I got one
So
in my backyard, 3 in my backyard, I guess, actually.
Well, what can we say?
I've got tanks still
No, I
set
have
up
too
all
much.
over my house. It's a mess. But I did want to say Stephen P 2003 aquatic. Wait, how do you say that? Aquatics.
Aquatics,
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, he said
aquatics, like awkward.
Zenger, which means Zen Ginger. Do you still want to do seahorses? I feel like I'm too lazy of a fish keeper to do seahorses properly. Number one, you're looking at lazy right here. And I keep seahorses very well. It's all about setting up properly. And Zen Ginger is part of our community. She's gonna do it and she's gonna do it right. And the thing
Yeah.
is, with Brandy, and I'm gonna talk to her on the side, it's Dan calls it the risk tolerance level, right? If you just want a tank and you're just setting it up and whatever, buy your seahorses from an LFS and risk it. They might be great. They might not be. They might eat frozen. They might not. You buy captive bred, pay a little bit more. You're going to get seahorses that you just don't have to worry about. You just don't have problems. I mean, it's just incredible. Like, we're so lucky these days. You got to pay more for captive bred, but they just do well. They might not give you fry, as I'm experiencing right now, but if you just want a tank, buy captive bred and you just don't have the
Yeah.
problems, right?
The thing is, it's one thing to spend money to get
And
a healthy pair of seahorses.
Right.
I think it's entirely something else to lose money more than once because you're getting wild caughts that already are having problems.
Mhm.
well, and I do want to say for the record, the average person wouldn't know that,
I know.
right? You go to an LFS and they say, look at these beautiful seahorses and they look beautiful and they're so cool and you're like, yay. And that's why,
I'm guilty.
right, we've all done it. So I'm just
Mhm.
saying that's why we're here, is to help each other figure it out, spend the extra money and get captive bred. It's so much
And you
easier.
won't know. I mean, you won't know enough. I mean, now that I've had seahorses for a while, I'd say if I got seahorses from the local fish store and they weren't in good condition, I wouldn't know it.
Yeah.
If I was new. I know
If you're
what to look
new, right.
new. Like if Brandy hasn't kept seahorses before
Right.
and they look like they're doing fine, but
Exactly.
they probably did have something
Right.
going
And
on.
we need to do more posts like,
Weakened immune system
sure.
for some reason, and something got them
Yep.
that didn't get the other creatures. I just have that feeling
No,
that
I think you're right. And that's why I said that's why I want to concentrate, not next week because we have a guest, but I want to concentrate and dive into what you do next, right?
Yeah.
You had a bad experience. How do you fix the tank without breaking it down and bleaching it? How do you fix it if you have critters in there so that you can add seahorses again?
See,
And so I'm gonna get some more details for you guys so I can not speak out my ass here. But yeah, go ahead, Cheryl.
just real quick, when I got into seahorses, they were wild caught. I knew they were wild caught. But the pet store that sold them to me happened to be a friend of mine who I'd known for over 20 years. And he'd had that pet store by that point for over 15 years. And he guided me, no, you don't want that one. And then when I went back to buy a second seahorse, because I bought one, it turned out to be a male. He goes, you want this one? This is his mate.
Mm-hmm.
And that was where I got my first seahorse fry. But this was from somebody that I had known for years.
Sure.
And I had worked with him for years. And I knew the person that did his collection basically in Florida, who was a licensed collector. And they were the ones.
Yes, Cheryl, you're so lucky. You had an amazing. Shut up, Cheryl. I love you. I love you, but we don't all get that amazing experience.
Yeah, but it was one of those things. If I hadn't had those people helping me,
Sure.
I would not have had the kind of success I did as soon as I did.
Well, and we're so thankful that you did have so much success because you've provided seahorses for others and really helped educate people. And so I was totally kidding. I was just being funny. But it's just I always get the bad experiences. So you guys don't ever feel bad about telling me about your bad experience because I probably had it. And I was gonna say,
My
wait,
first
no, wait,
tank was
hang
in
on, hang
1989,
hang
and
on,
I didn't
Holly.
know anything.
Hang
I
on,
lost
Holly.
him.
In there, and he'd
Hang
go,
on.
"No,
Time
you
out.
don't want that one."
Time out. Everybody's talking. I want to say real quick, we need to do more in the group about education, like we're talking about, meaning post a picture showing a fat seahorse, a healthy seahorse, and showing if your seahorse has a caved in stomach like this, that's not correct. Like Ray called me out. I was so glad he did. And I was able to explain why and what that meant. We need to post more of this stuff like this is what you look for. If it's not eating frozen foods, don't buy it. If it's looks like this, if it's coughing, don't buy it. You know, like we need to do more of that for newcomers.
There's actually a lot of information on Dan's,
Sure.
but and also on Alicia's,
Sure.
and there's also a lot of there's some other groups overseas who are that.
Yes, but we're going to make our group the best, and we're going to have the information in our group. So
Yeah,
let's
well,
put
the
it
thing
here
is, what I'm
too.
saying is these can present some topics that we might want to take a look at.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree. Absolutely.
I mean,
Holly, were you going to say something? I feel like I overtalked you.
Oh, no. I was saying, my first experience with seahorses, they were probably wild caught. It was in 1989, and I had a pair, and I think it was like a 20-gallon tank
Yep.
with a power head
Yep.
and an under gravel filter because that's what we used to use back in the day. And I didn't know anything about seahorses. The store I got them from really didn't know anything about seahorses. And I think they only lasted 6 months.
Yeah.
That was before the internet, really. And yeah, didn't know anybody that knew anything about them. Didn't, I think I had one book maybe from the 1960s or something. So
well, that's why
David
I no matter how tired I am, I show up every Wednesday because I feel like we help each other. And I always try to share my bad
Absolutely.
experiences because don't ever feel stupid because something bad happened. It's probably not your fault. It's probably because you got a raw deal. And that's, we help each other figure out, oh, this is how to do it better. And we're so lucky to have something like this where we can help each other, right? And the other groups are amazing too.
True story.
But we're live, so that counts for something. But
I mean,
anyways, no, I'm just saying I appreciate all of you.
Yeah, Chris just popped in.
Oh, Chris popped in. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I wanted to I want to make sure I get through the comments. So Zen Ginger said when she sets up for seahorses, they'll probably live alone with a few gorgonians. That's it. Just have to worry about their care and nobody else. Man, I'm seahorses
Makes
and
it a lot
snails.
simpler.
I'm seahorses and snails. But there's nothing wrong with my first tank was macro crazy and all sorts of stuff. And that was gorgeous and fun too. You learn what you like
Yeah.
and you go through it. Okay.
It's
And
just the more stuff there is to take care of and
but you have to remember,
keep
Holly,
happy.
we're old. We're getting old, right? When I was
Yeah.
10 years ago, I'm like, give me all the stuff, right? So nothing
Well, the
wrong with
water
that.
change today about killed
Right.
me.
I'm with you. I can't even get my salt. And in fact, did we talk about this live? I don't think we did. I'm cheap
Yeah,
and
we
I
did.
do instant ocean salt. I'm going to get through the comments, but I buy instant ocean salt, the purple stuff, the old stuff. I don't care. It's cool. The seahorses are fine. I can't get it. Like all of a sudden, anybody else having this problem? Like I have ordered it on Amazon every time I need salt. And all of a sudden, I ordered it. I went to check, why isn't it here? And it said, we'll let you know when we can ship. It's back ordered.
Is this salt? You're talking about salt?
Yeah,
You want
like
a
a
good one?
basic salt.
You want a good one? I ordered 4 of the big boxes, 200-gallon boxes of salt. Doesn't matter who I ordered them from, but they did arrive. The first 3 were very heavy. I picked them up, got them inside. The 4th one I picked up, and it was light as a feather. I opened it up.
Uh-oh.
It was full of a child's birthday invitations.
Oh Lord. Oh Lord.
You know what, Cheryl? That's fun you bring that up because I have repeat delivery from Petco, and last month I normally get 2 buckets of salt every month. Last month I got 1 bucket of salt and a giant bag of cat litter, and and so
Oh,
I,
hey, you're as
I
good as me.
I touch with them, and they sent me another bucket of salt, no charge, and they didn't make me ship the cat litter back. I gave it to a friend.
Well, what's
Yes.
so funny is they're like, how did birthday invitations get in your salt?
Right.
I don't know.
All right. I'm jumping back to the questions just to get through them. Coral Works, I know I'm backing up. You asked this a long time ago, but your question was how much water volume does the AIO sump filter section hold? So when we're talking, I need to turn my video back on. When we're talking AIO, what that stands for is all in one. So I set up this all in one tank to prove that you could keep seahorses without a sump. I always recommend a sump. You're going to do better with a sump. But I wanted to show somebody in an apartment or whatever could keep seahorses. So in an all-in-one, the front half of the tank is the tank, and then there's this back section that's not below it like a sump. It's just in the back, and you've got a pump that pushes the water in. You've got little holes that bring it forward through the pump, and basically you can put equipment back there. I don't know the size, but I will say I didn't mean to be confusing. I'm doing the all-in-one. I don't think that Brandy is. I don't
She
think
has a
that.
32-gallon BioCube.
Yeah,
I
so
don't
it's
I
not all
don't
in one.
know what
But the
those come.
yeah, and honestly, and I'm going to talk to Brandy on the side. I think that's part of the problem is that when you have just a standalone tank and not even all in one, where you can put a K1 reactor or an RK chamber or KC chamber, then you're counting exclusively on your rock and sand,
Yeah.
and that's just
We've,
to me a no.
we've told people for years, do not use the biocubes for seahorses.
Yeah.
That one, they get too hot. With the lid on, it makes it even worse. Uh, they really don't have the water volume in most instances to really be able to sustain more than 1 or 2 seahorses at a time. And again, I'm going to repeat it, they run hot,
Yeah.
like
Well,
76 minimum, and that's in cold weather.
and that's why, that's why we're here is to help people figure it out and do better. And as for the question, could the bacteria in your media use up all the oxygen in your filter and then shock the fish when the pump comes back on? I will just say, I don't know how to answer that, but basically, to avoid whatever your question is, that's why my RKC chamber is in the tank, not in the filter section, and I keep it running during the water change. Like I keep that running constantly. The K1 media reactor that's in the all-in-one chamber part, I keep that running. Anything air powered, is that the word? Air powered continues to run. I turn the pumps off, but I keep the K1 media reactor, I keep the RKC chamber, and I keep my open air line running during a water change. So I guess I don't know the answer to your question, but that's how I avoid whatever that could lead
I
to.
don't, because I run with everything that I've got. It's got sumps, and so I don't have to even deal with it in that respect. The only thing I have to do is turn off the main filter pump. All the other pumps can keep going because they're in the sump.
Right?
Yeah.
Any tips? Brian asked, got any tips for raising Blue pipefish. Oh my gosh, Brian, I'm so sorry, but I have to be up at 5 a.m. That's a whole nother week. We can totally dive into that topic, I promise you, but that's a whole nother week. And oh guys, I'm trying to get through all these, but I can't see. And I see Chris Carey was here. Terry, you wanted a link to what? I'm sorry, guys. I try to keep up during this break.
I know
I'm
there was a
sorry.
lot too.
Yeah,
A
and I
lot.
love it. I love that, you know, we have conversations going and questions. This is what I want to happen. I just need more help modding this chat because I can't keep up. But I hope that we answered all the most important. You guys can tell I'm tired. I hope we answered all the most important questions. I'm going to work with Brandy on the side because we're going to get her some seahorses that are doing well in her tank. And next week we do have a guest, but we'll have open chat every week after that probably. And any questions you have, we can absolutely discuss. Terry's, you said never mind. Sorry, I just missed it. I apologize. But yeah, I'll any links you need, I will post in the comment section. And guys, I'm like falling asleep talking to you. I'm so sorry, but I have to be up at 5 a.m. So for tonight, let's do the happy. Anybody else have anything else they need to say? Did I cut anybody off or we good?
No.
All right. Let's say Happy Wine Wednesday. We'll be back next week for with a guest. Watch for the post. And then we love you, so come back and talk seahorses with us next week. All right.